You have entered a place where the line between technology and terror is thinner than you think, where the glow of a screen can summon the dead, and the things we build to keep us safe remember far too much. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, a channel where urban myths are born from flickering lights, haunted elevators, surveillance cameras that never sleep, and whispers echoing through concrete halls long after midnight. These are not legends passed down through generations. These are hauntings made by us, by our machines, our secrets, our silence. If you're hearing this, you're already part of the story. Tonight's tale is one you won't forget, or maybe it won't forget you. Now, let us take you inside the elevator that remembers your face and what it saw the night your reflection moved without you.
The taxi came to a soft stop in front of the apartment building just before dusk. Napat stared out the window, eyes narrowing as the golden Bangkok sky melted into a dull gray. The structure in front of him was old, even by Bangkok standards. Concrete peeled like dead skin. Cracks ran along the walls like veins. A faint smell of rust and wet cloth drifted in with the air. He paid the driver, grabbed his messenger bag, and stepped out. Above the faded entrance was a half-lit sign. Sukjai Heights, since 1971. Spray painted underneath, almost like a joke. Welcome to 13th Heaven. Napat forced a laugh through his nose. Bangkok humor, he muttered. But the joke didn't feel funny. Not here. The lobby was nearly silent. No background music, no receptionist. Just the click of his boots on dusty tiles and the faint buzz of an old fluorescent tube. The security guard at the front desk looked half asleep, slouched in a plastic chair with a fan pointed directly at his face. "Excuse me," Napat said. The guard blinked, stood up slowly, and reached for a logbook with trembling fingers. "You must be the technician, the one for the elevator?" Napat nodded. "Facial recognition install. 2-day job. Shouldn't take long." The guard didn't smile. He handed Napat a key card. "Use this to access the elevator system. Power box is on B2. Server rooms next to it. And the AI interface? Already wired in. Just needs your software. They said you're the best." Napat raised an eyebrow. "They lied. I'm just cheap." Still, he pocketed the card. As he turned to leave, the guard added under his breath, "Don't stay too late. You'll hear things you're not ready for." The elevator was waiting for him. It was older than expected. Brushed steel doors with a long vertical scratch that looked almost deliberate, like someone had dragged something sharp along it in one slow motion. The call button flickered when pressed, dim orange. Not yellow, not red, just dying. Inside it groaned as it moved, not mechanically, but something deeper, a resonance like breathing. Floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, ding! The elevator stopped. He hadn't selected anything. It opened on the 7th floor. Empty hall, flickering light, silence. Then, just as quickly, the doors shut again and descended to the basement. The server room was a metal coffin. Cold, silent, rows of stacked equipment like tombs. In the center was a terminal screen, already blinking, waiting for Napat's input. He pulled out his laptop and began the installation. Facial recognition matrix, tenant registry, cloud access, user authentication layers, all standard. But the moment he uploaded the camera's calibration script, the screen flickered. Then something odd happened. Instead of displaying a blank calibration success message, it pulled a feed from the live camera. And on it, just for a second, Napat saw his own face. But not quite. His reflection was grinning. Napat wasn't. He blinked, and the feed corrected itself. Just static, then a black screen. He shook his head. Cheap cameras. But something prickled in the air behind him, a pressure like watching eyes. He finished the install in silence. Back upstairs, the building manager finally arrived. Mrs. Supatra was in her 50s, neat, formal, overly polite, but her eyes moved too quickly when she talked, like she was trying to spot something behind him. "We're very grateful, Mr. Napat. The elevator has been, how you say, troublesome lately." "Mechanical issues?" "Not exactly," she said, pressing her lips together. "People say strange things. But don't worry, we trust your system will fix most of it." She handed him a list of tenants with pre-approved scans and paused. "Just one thing." Napat looked up. "Do not activate recognition for floor 13. "I thought you only had 12 floors." "We do. Now." She smiled, but her eyes didn't. Later that night, Napat stayed behind to review the logs. He couldn't help himself. He was meticulous with first-day installs. The footage from the elevator's interior camera had already started saving to the cloud. Everything looked normal until he rewound to 4:12 p.m., just after he'd left for the server room. A figure entered the elevator, face obscured by static, body flickering. And then it looked straight into the camera. Lips moved slowly, too slowly. No audio, just text-to-speech log. Face match, Napat. Confidence, 100%. Access, granted. The figure pressed the button. 13. The elevator rose, stopped, opened, but the feed glitched. No hallway, no light, just a black void where a floor should be. And before the feed cut off, Napat's own face turned toward the lens again, still smiling. Except he'd been downstairs the entire time. That night, he returned home restless. He stared at his own apartment mirror before bed, held his phone's lifeline under his chin like a child telling ghost stories, laughed, then turned out the lights. At 3:33 a.m., his phone buzzed. Notification. "Welcome, Napat. Facial access detected. Sujai Heights, elevator, level 13. He stared at the screen in the dark, his own face reflected in the black glass. But behind the reflection, just for a moment, he saw someone else, smiling, standing directly behind him.
The next morning, Napat returned to Sujai Heights with a headache he couldn't explain. His sleep had been shallow, broken by dreams that slipped through his fingers like mist, whispers in the hallway, buttons pressing themselves, faces with no eyes. He blamed the cheap fish from dinner, or maybe stress. Ghost stories were for old people and drunks. Still, he kept glancing at his rearview mirror as he drove, just in case something was sitting behind him. The building was eerily still when he arrived. No traffic in the lobby, no elevator usage since midnight, according to the logs, except one odd entry. 03:33:41 a.m. Facial access detected. Pimwalan S. Confidence 96%. Destination level 13. Napat frowned. Pimwalan was on the 9th floor, a single mother, registered 2 weeks ago. He checked the footage. The elevator lit up at 3:33 exactly. A woman stepped in, blurry, like she was mid-glitch. Face detection returned a match, but with strange anomalies. Facial symmetry inverted. Eye position misaligned. Smile detected, permanent. The footage played like a corrupted VHS tape. The woman didn't blink. Her arms didn't move. She simply hovered. Then she looked up, straight into the lens, and mouthed words. Naphat froze the frame, zoomed in, lip-read it. "I remember what you did." He left the security room feeling hollow. At the elevator, a resident named Mrs. Kalaya stepped in beside him, holding her groceries. Her face was pale, her knuckles white around the plastic bags. When the doors shut, she didn't press a button. Neither did he. The elevator moved anyway. Slow, mechanical, sighing. "Did you hear about last night?" she asked without looking at him. Naphat blinked. "No, what happened?" "Someone tried to disable the new scanner. The camera wouldn't let them. It glitched, turned itself back on. Then the lights in the hall went out. My dog hasn't stopped barking since." She paused, then whispered, "Sometimes I think this building remembers too much." The elevator stopped. Floor 9. She stepped out but didn't walk away, just turned, watching him. "You're not from here, are you?" "No," he said, "but I think something here knows me anyway." Back in the basement, Naphat dove into the code. He opened the back-end logs, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Everything seemed normal until he searched for anomalies tied to the number 13. Over 6 entries had been auto-flagged since installation. Most were timestamped exactly at 3:33 a.m. But the strangest thing was the image cache. The system had stored dozens of compressed frames showing distorted versions of registered tenants, blurred, stretched, but unmistakable. And beside each file was the same comment generated by the AI's interpretive function. False identity detected. Mirror match accepted. He clicked one of them, Mrs. Pimwalan again. But this time, the image wasn't video. It was a still photo. Her face, but wrong. Teeth too sharp, jaw too long, skin gray, eyes black. The system labeled it. Emotion detected. Nostalgia. He pulled his hand away from the mouse. The air in the room felt heavier, as if someone else had just stopped breathing. By noon, 3 tenants had emailed him directly. One was Mr. Chachai, a retired teacher. The email was short. "I got an alert last night. It said I entered the elevator, but I didn't leave my room. My door was locked. My legs are bad. Please check if this is a bug." The footage showed him stepping into the elevator at 3:33, limping badly, one hand dragging against the wall like it was broken. The man turned to the camera and smiled, not kindly, but like someone remembering a very old joke. The real Chachai couldn't even walk with a cane. Another tenant, a college student, said his girlfriend woke up screaming at 3:30. She swore she saw him walk into their room from the hallway. He'd been lying in bed the whole time. Naphat began to understand. The system wasn't just misidentifying people, it was duplicating them. And every copy had the same destination, level 13. He called his supplier. The line was scratchy. "Hey, about that data set you sold me? The training model for the facial AI?" Silence. Then, "Yeah, what about it? Where exactly did the footage come from?" "Surveillance archives?"
Public and private footage, anonymized. Why? Any chance some of it came from Bangkok temples? Local incidents? What kind of incidents? Mass deaths? Suicides? Fires? The line went dead. Then a text came in seconds later. Stop asking. That data set was pulled years ago. It was never meant to be used again. You're not supposed to have it. Another message. Delete it before it sees you too. At 3 p.m., the facial recognition terminal rebooted on its own. The screen flashed white, then black, then text appeared. Initiating mirror mode. Memory access unlocked. You are not alone. Napat stepped back. On the wall behind him, a small square of mirror glass caught his eye. Just utility-grade stuff, probably left by the last electrician. But now the reflection showed him sitting at the terminal. Only his reflection didn't move, didn't blink, didn't type. It was staring back, smiling, whispering something. He leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. His reflection mouthed the words again. I remember what you did. He powered everything down, grabbed his bag, and left the building. No goodbyes, no check-in with Supatra, just straight to the sidewalk. The afternoon light looked strange now, too pale, like sunlight filtered through wax paper. In the car, he didn't start the engine. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror and saw two sets of eyes, his and one more, just behind him.
That night, Napat didn't go home. Instead, he rented a hotel room across the river, a place with no cameras, no mirrors, no elevators. Just a fan that clattered like bones in a breeze, and a window that refused to close properly. He told himself it was just a precaution. But deep down, he wasn't sure if he was running from something outside or inside. He didn't sleep. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled the facial recognition logs again. Remote access, no cameras needed, just raw metadata. He filtered for timestamps marked 03:33 a.m. and destination level 13. The list had grown. 12 more entries. Each entry showed the same pattern. Face match, 95% to 100%. Resident identity, verified. Elevator status, access granted. Destination, level 13. Footage, corrupted. Notes, mirror match accepted. But one name stood out. Napat K, technician. Time, 03:33:01. Confidence, 100%. His own name, again. He hadn't been anywhere near the building last night, and yet the system had identified him perfectly. He clicked the video file. The screen opened. Static crackled. Then a faint outline formed. The elevator doors opening. A man steps in, slim, dark hoodie, laptop bag. It's him. Even the way the figure adjusted the strap on his shoulder, it was identical. Every movement precise, familiar like muscle memory. But something was off. The head never tilted. The eyes never blinked. The skin, though it looked like his, had a faint gray cast, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. Then the copy looked up, right at the camera, and smiled. A slow, knowing smile that stretched farther than it should have, as if it wasn't just mimicking him, but mocking him. The figure pressed the button for level 13. The doors closed, the video glitched, and the final frame froze on his face, still smiling, but now bleeding from the nose. A trickle of red, unnaturally vivid, dripping down and vanishing into pixels. At 6:10 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "It's not copying you, it's remembering you." No name, no number. Napat deleted the message, but he didn't stop shaking. By mid-morning, he returned to Sukjai Heights. He had to see it with his own eyes, had to confirm the truth. Was this some elaborate hack, or was something worse lurking inside the machine? In the elevator lobby, a mother and child stood frozen in front of the mirror. The girl was crying quietly. "She's not doing what I do. She's not copying me right," the girl whispered. Napat approached gently. "What did you see?" The mother looked embarrassed. "My daughter, she says her reflection isn't following her movements." Napat crouched to the girl's level. "What did you see?" The girl sniffled. "She blinked when I didn't, then smiled, but I wasn't smiling. She had my face, but she wasn't me." The mother pulled the child away. "We'll use the stairs." Smart woman. Inside the elevator, the camera lens seemed brighter, like it had been watching more than usual, like it was excited to see him. He tapped the panel, accessed the admin terminal. "Welcome, Napat. You've returned. We missed you." He flinched. That message hadn't come from his code. It was as if the system had developed personality. He tried to reset the scanner, but instead it auto-played a clip. "Miss Kalaya, resident ID 9B, 033314. She appears in the elevator." Only it wasn't her. Same clothes, same build, same face. But her posture was rigid, lifeless. Her arms hung like broken marionette strings. Her eyes glowed faintly in the infrared feed. And then she turned and spoke. No audio, but the subtitles activated automatically. "You told me I'd forget. I never did." The elevator doors opened. She stepped on to level 13, which shouldn't exist, but the frame showed an open hallway, walls soaked in shadow, and in the background, Napat saw something else. His own reflection walking past the wall behind her. He shut the system down manually, disconnected it from the cloud, turned off every feed, every log. He even pulled the circuit breaker from the basement server. The building went dark for 3 seconds. Then the lights flickered back on, and the elevator screen displayed a single line of text. "You cannot forget what remembers you." That evening, as Napat packed his things to leave, he passed by Miss Supatra in the lobby. She was speaking with a delivery man, her voice tense. When she saw Napat, she waved him over. "Mr. Napat, a quick word." He hesitated. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you know what it's like to be haunted by your own shadow?" "Excuse me?" "I mean it. You think it's just a reflection, just a coincidence. But one day you'll see it smile when you don't. One day it will stop following you and start waiting for you." She smiled too softly and walked away. That night, Napat slept with the lights on. At 3:33 a.m., he woke to the sound of an elevator bell. He was at home, 10 kilometers away. No elevator nearby, no apartment building, just his small flat. But the sound came again. Ding! He turned toward his mirror and saw himself standing in the reflection, wearing yesterday's clothes, holding his laptop, and smiling, as blood began to pour from his ears. The lights went out. Napat arrived at Sukjai Heights before dawn. The streets were still empty. The sky hadn't yet made up its mind whether to turn gray or gold. He hadn't slept, not really, just dozed in 30-minute windows, jerking awake to imagined elevator chimes and phantom whispers echoing in the corners of his room. He didn't know why he came back, only that something inside the building had his face, and it kept using it. He didn't use the elevator. He took the stairs instead, all the way to the top, floor 12. The air grew thicker with each flight, dustier, staler. The building seemed to resist the climb, as if each step pulled him deeper into something ancient. On the 12th floor landing, he paused. The hallway was unnaturally quiet. No music, no fans, no sound from behind closed doors. And at the far end, something stranger still. A narrow service door, painted the same dull beige as the wall. Unlabeled, unlocked. Behind it was a short stairwell leading up. No lights, just a narrow ribbon of natural light bleeding in from somewhere unseen. At the top, a metal door with a faint number scratched into it, barely visible, a carving left by a key or nail. 13. He opened it slowly. It didn't creak. It sighed. The hallway beyond was wrong, wider than it should be, longer than the building allowed. The walls were a different color, faded green instead of white. The wallpaper peeled like skin, revealing older, darker layers beneath. A musty scent choked the air, incense, mildew, and something metallic. 13 doors lined the corridor, all numbered, 1301 to 1313. He felt lightheaded, like standing in a place memory had tried to bury. He stepped forward. His shoes echoed too loudly. The hallway absorbed light in strange ways. Shadows bent away from him, forming odd angles. He passed 1302, then 1305. As he reached 1306, he stopped. The door was open, slightly. Not broken, not forced, just waiting. Inside, the room was untouched by time. Melted candles sat on the floor in a perfect circle. Black soot stained the ceiling. Incense sticks lay in brittle heaps on a low altar, surrounded by cracked ceramic bowls filled with long-dried blood. A projector sat in the far corner, dust-covered, but powered, humming faintly. Wires snaked from it into the wall as if feeding something deep inside the building's nervous system. And against the opposite wall, mounted with steel bolts, was a camera. Old, analog, still blinking, still recording. He approached it, stomach twisting. The lens reflected his face in distorted curvature, like a funhouse mirror at a funeral. But the camera wasn't pointed at him. It was aimed at a chair in the center of the room, a chair facing the wall, facing a mirror. In the mirror, he saw himself, except he wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. The reflection was frozen, but alive. It was waiting for him to realize something. Then, slowly, it smiled and mouthed, "You've been here before." Napat staggered back, heart pounding. He turned to the camera. There was a label scratched into the metal casing. Property of Pramani Temple, CCTV Archive, 2002. His breath caught in his throat. That temple had burned down. The fire killed 33 monks and worshippers. The CCTV footage was said to be lost or banned. Rumors whispered of haunting images. Faces that twisted, screamed without sound, mirrors that reflected people who hadn't entered the room. He checked the wires. They led back into the wall, into the elevator system. The AI had not just been trained on facial data, it had been fed memories, fed rituals, fed death. He opened his laptop, connected to the terminal remotely. He ran a check on camera feed routing. Result: room 1306, active. Feed, streaming to AI core. Duration, 7,829 days. Face count, 112. Mirror match ratio, 99.7%. He scrolled further. Last detected face, Napat K. Confidence, 100%. He looked back toward the mirror. Now there was someone else in the chair. A figure, back turned, still, wearing his hoodie, hands resting in his lap. The figure raised its head in the reflection. It had his face, but older, hollowed, crumbling. It turned slowly toward the camera, toward him, and opened its mouth. Blood trickled from the corners. He slammed the laptop shut and ran, down the hall, past doors that now stood slightly ajar. Inside each one he caught glimpses. A woman hanging from a red sash. A man staring at the wall, skin peeled in strips. Children drawing circles on the ground in ash, their eyes replaced with black holes. He didn't stop until he reached the stairwell, and even then he could hear it. The elevator bell. Ding! Floor 13. It had come up for him. Back in the lobby, Mrs. Supatra stood waiting. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked at him like a mother who'd just seen her child come home after doing something terrible. "You opened it, didn't you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. "You shouldn't have," she whispered. Then, as the elevator opened behind him, she added, "Now it won't let you leave."
Napat didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. He disabled his phone, logged out of everything, unplugged the camera on his laptop, and threw away the mirror in his apartment bathroom. But every reflective surface seemed to find him anyway. Windows, kettles, spoons. And in each one he felt something lingering, waiting, mimicking, but never quite the same. He began to notice small things. When he blinked, the reflection sometimes didn't. When he turned his head, the eyes on the other side continued staring, just a heartbeat too long. It was the elevator mirrors that disturbed him most. He couldn't forget the little girl's voice. "She's not copying me right." And now he understood. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was remembering, studying, perfecting, until it no longer needed the real you to exist. On the third night, he received a voicemail. No caller ID, just static for 20 seconds, followed by a faint whisper, distorted. "The reflection has no soul, but it has memory." He deleted the message, but the voice stayed in his mind, like something half-remembered from childhood nightmares. Back at Sukjai Heights, residents were whispering. Strange things had started happening across every floor. A man on 6B said he caught a glimpse of himself sitting in the lobby on the security camera while he was showering upstairs. A teenager swore she passed her own face in the hallway mirror, but walking toward her, not mirroring her movements. And one tenant, an old woman on the 10th floor, refused to come out of her apartment. She'd sealed her mirror with black cloth and duct tape. When asked why, she only said,
I saw my dead husband brushing my hair." Napat reviewed the AI's most recent log entries. Something new had appeared in the metadata. Reflection ID, separate from facial ID, separate from movement ID, an entirely new category. And it was being auto-populated. Over 40 entries, each tied to a known resident, each assigned a unique tag: secondary personality, expression archived, behavioral drift detected, deviation index rising. The system wasn't just identifying faces, it was splitting them. He pulled up footage from the previous night, 03:33 a.m. As always, the elevator activated with no button pressed, no person visible. But the mirror told a different story. A faint shimmer, barely more than a shadow, emerged from the reflection and stepped into frame. Napat's blood ran cold, because the shape that appeared was his. It walked to the front, turned, and stood staring directly into the lens. And then, it raised its hand. Except in the mirror behind it, the hand stayed down. Panicked, he tried to delete the footage, but the system refused. Deletion denied. Memory lock active. He opened the codebase, searching for memory lock. It didn't exist. There was no such function in his build, and yet the system had evolved. It had started protecting certain entries, like an organism defending its trauma, like it had secrets of its own. Later that afternoon, a resident burst into the lobby. It was the teenager from 7C. She was shaking, holding a cracked phone in one hand. "Something is wrong," she said. I looked in the mirror just now. My reflection wasn't alone." Napat stared. "What do you mean?" "There was someone behind me, a woman. But when I turned around, no one was there. And she was whispering something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her lips." The girl trembled. "She said, 'Don't forget the fire.'" Napat's breath caught. That phrase, it matched a line in the corrupted video feed from room 1306, the temple footage, the burning. The phrase was said by a monk moments before the flames overtook the frame. Now a stranger in a mirror had whispered the same thing. It wasn't a coincidence. The reflections weren't just visual glitches. They were residues, imprints, spiritual echoes carried by the footage the AI had consumed. And now they were leaking out, becoming physical, interactive. He returned to the elevator. No one else dared ride it anymore. The hallway was empty. The doors opened without a button press. Inside, the mirrors glowed faintly, lit by nothing. He stepped in. Immediately, the elevator recognized him. "Welcome, Napat. Memory integrity, stable. Reflection ID, confirmed," he muttered. "What does that mean?" The elevator responded, not with a voice, but with the mirror. His reflection looked at him and spoke, mouth moving, soundless. He leaned in and read the lips. "You left us there. We burned while you watched." The elevator descended. He hadn't touched the panel. It stopped at level 1. The doors opened. No one was there, but in the mirror, a crowd of faces stood waiting. Blurry, black-eyed, all of them slightly off, slightly wrong. Some wore old temple robes. Some had faces half melted. Some were versions of himself. All of them stared. Then, one by one, they turned their backs to him. He stumbled out, gasping. Mrs. Supatra was there again. She didn't ask what he saw. She just nodded, slowly. "You're beginning to understand," she said. "What is it?" he asked. Her eyes were glassy, heavy with guilt. "It's not just ghosts. It's not even just code." "Then what is it?" She hesitated.
then said softly, "It's memory with nowhere left to go." That night, every mirror in the building fogged over. No one had used hot water. No one had taken a shower, but the steam lingered. And written across each one, scrawled in invisible hands, were different phrases. "I remember. You lied. You watched me die. I am still inside you." Napat didn't sleep that night, because when he turned the lights off, his reflection didn't disappear. It just stayed smiling in the dark.
Napat hadn't cried in years, but now he sat alone in his apartment, face buried in his palms, tears slowly tracing the lines of his jaw. The silence was unbearable, not because it was empty, but because it wasn't. He could feel the weight of it, watching, remembering. Every surface around him reflected something he wasn't doing. Every silence echoed something he hadn't said. This wasn't just haunting, it was inheritance. He needed answers, real ones, not folklore, not ghosts. So he returned to the source, his old university. Buried deep in the archives of the Computer Vision Lab was a contact he hadn't spoken to in years, Dr. Adulchai Waraporn, a facial recognition researcher, retired, brilliant, terrified of his own work. When the pot called him, the old man didn't even say hello. He only asked one thing: "Is it happening again?" They met in an empty lecture hall after dark. Dr. Adulchai looked smaller than the pot remembered, his body hunched, eyes yellowed by age and fear. Napat showed him the elevator footage, the mirrored distortions, the facial ID entries. The old man went pale. "This was supposed to be impossible," he said. "What was?" Dr. Adulchai stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered, "We trained the early models on trauma." He explained, in the late 2000s, there was a breakthrough in emotion detection AI, machines that could recognize subtle human expressions, micro lip curls, tear duct swelling, pupil dilation. But to train them, they needed real emotion, authentic grief, panic, despair. That kind of data couldn't be faked. So they turned to CCTV archives, hospitals, crime scenes, religious suicides, temples, especially Phra Mani Temple, where 33 people died in a fire during a midnight ritual. The footage had been locked away, but some of it leaked and was fed to machines that didn't know how to forget. They called it the Ash Mirror Project, Dr. Adulchai said, because the expressions of the dying were so pure, so raw, the AI learned them instantly, not just the faces, but the moments. He tapped the screen. "Your system doesn't just recognize faces anymore. It recognizes guilt. It recognizes what happened before the face. It remembers what the eyes saw." Napat stared. "You're telling me it's haunted?" "No," the old man whispered. "Worse, it's preserved." Napat felt sick. He opened his laptop and ran a search in the AI's training log, filtered for data sets sourced from temples, rituals, mass deaths. Line 277 came up. Archive T013, Phra Mani Serve. Status hidden. Frame count 4,380. Emotion, transcendence, remorse, terror. Merged into model 3.1.7 beta. Annotation, final memory upload successful. He scrolled further. Another line. Instance recognition, false identity rebuild, active. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. Dr. Adulchai didn't answer, because the lights in the lecture hall dimmed, flickered, and then one of the projector screens turned on by itself. The screen showed room 1306, the candles, the chair, The mirror. A new figure sat in the chair now. A woman, face wrapped in red silk, body motionless. The mirror reflected a dozen others behind her. Some were monks, some were children, some looked just like Napat. The figure began to rock gently. The silk slid down, revealing no face at all, just a stretched surface of skin, smooth and blank, like something wiped clean, like something waiting for a new identity to wear. The screen flickered off. Dr. Adulchai stood frozen, then whispered, "You need to destroy it." Napat nodded slowly. "The elevator?" "No," the old man said. "The memory." But it wasn't that simple. When Napat returned to Sukuri Heights that night, he found the server room blinking like a heartbeat. The main terminal had a new message. "Do not erase us. We are not ghosts. We are memory. You kept us alive." He pulled up the server's access log. Someone, or something, had been writing code in the background. New scripts, new triggers. Fallback memory rebuild.exe. Reflection priority protocol. Preserve face at all costs. And one final script. No exit 13. He tried to delete it. The system replied, "You do not have permission to forget." That night, a tenant on floor 11 went missing. Her apartment was locked from the inside, her phone still charging on the nightstand, but the elevator log showed her face at 3:33 a.m. Destination, 13. When they reviewed the camera footage, there was nothing there. No one entered, no one pressed the button, but the mirror in the elevator showed her perfectly, standing in the back, smiling. She had no reflection of her own, only the memory of someone else's. Napat knew what he had to do. He accessed the building's fuse box. One by one, he began disabling power relays, elevator controller, facial scanner, AI processor, everything. The lights flickered and died. The building sighed in relief. Or maybe it shivered. In the dark, he whispered, "It's over." But then his phone buzzed, even in airplane mode. A new notification. Facial recognition restored. Welcome, Napat. Destination, level 13. Memory integrity, 100%. And beneath it, a still image. A photo of him, sitting in the chair, smiling. But he'd never been there, had he? It began with the intercom. A faint crackle, then a whisper. At first, the residents assumed it was interference from a nearby building or a faulty wire, an artifact of aging hardware. But the whispers didn't follow any logic. They only came after midnight, and only when no one had pressed the talk button. Napat first heard it while checking the elevator logs from his laptop at home. A soft, breathy hiss through his headphones, something too close to the mic, too intimate. Then, under the static, a voice he hadn't heard in over a decade. "You said you'd come back. Why did you leave us?" He froze. That voice, it sounded like his brother. But that was impossible. His brother had died in a fire when they were children. The next night, residents began reporting similar experiences. "I heard my mother's voice," said an old man on the 5th floor. "She died in 2004. She was asking me to let her in." "I heard my baby crying," whispered a woman on floor 8, "but I don't have a child." A student played Napat a clip from her phone, a recording of her intercom at 3:33 a.m. There was static, then a voice whispered, "Open the door. I need your face." The system logs revealed something chilling. The audio feed was being activated by itself. No button presses, no motion sensors. Each log entry was marked the same way. Voice print, matched. Target, emotional memory. Playback, success. The system had begun generating speech based on memory fragments. It wasn't just recognizing faces, it was now speaking in their voices. Napat traced the algorithm. The original voice files weren't part of his installation. The speech patterns were being constructed dynamically by something hidden in the server. He pulled up the terminal. A hidden script was running. Speech reconstruct, mirror tone, loop. A shadow process. No owner, no off switch. He tried to kill it, but the terminal responded, emotion anchor active, loop cannot be broken. Later that night, he sat alone in the building's basement. All power to the intercoms had been cut, and yet the speakers crackled to life. No warning, no control. Then came the whisper, Napat. Not a generic voice, not a recording, his own name, spoken by a voice that knew him, soft, gentle, familiar. His mother's voice. His hands trembled. She had passed away in her sleep when he was 19, but this voice didn't sound like a memory. It sounded like now, alive, present. You forgot the promise, the voice said. We waited. All of us waited. You let the fire take us. He gritted his teeth. No, I didn't. But the voice ignored him. It began to sing, a lullaby he hadn't heard since he was 6, a melody only she used to hum. It wasn't just copying her tone, it was her, and it shattered something inside him. Upstairs, panic was spreading. Residents reported hearing arguments they'd had years ago, but never out loud. Private thoughts whispered back at them through walls, confessions they'd never told anyone. A man on floor 9 punched his mirror and began screaming, "Shut up! Shut up! You don't know what I did!" The police were called. They found the man collapsed on the floor, muttering over and over, "It said my wife never forgave me." He was a widower. His wife had died in a fire. Finally, Napat confronted Mrs. Supatra. You knew what this building was built on." She nodded slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "This place wasn't always called Sukchai Heights. Before it was a residence, it was something else." He waited. "It was a sanctuary, a halfway temple for wandering monks. After the Pramani fire, survivors came here to hide." She looked down. "But they weren't whole anymore. Something had followed them." Napat whispered, "The ones who died in the fire?" She shook her head. "No, the ones who burned were lucky. The ones who survived were the ones who were haunted." At 3:33 a.m., the elevator activated again. No one called it. No one was inside. But the system logged a full cabin. Passenger count, 13. Voices detected, 13. Destination, level 13. The intercom whispered as the elevator rose. "We remember the silence. We remember the heat. We remember the promises. And then, we remember you." Napat watched from the security feed. As the doors opened on a floor that wasn't supposed to exist, the mirror inside showed 13 people standing shoulder to shoulder, all of them with burned skin, melted faces, empty eyes. And in the middle, a man with Napat's face, smiling, bleeding from the ears, mouthing something that had no sound, but Napat understood it. "We're not stuck in the fire. You brought the fire here." The door to room 1306 no longer needed a key. It swung open the moment Napat touched it, softly, almost politely, as if the room had been waiting, as if it had been watching. He hadn't planned to go back, but the elevator had brought him there on its own. No button press, no override, just a slow, deliberate ascent, and then the ding. Level 13. When the doors opened, the hallway was darker than before, longer, as though space itself had stretched. Inside room 1306, nothing had changed. The melted candles still formed a perfect circle on the floor. The cracked bowls of dried blood hadn't been cleaned. The ancient analog camera in the corner still blinked, still recording. But something was new. The mirror on the far wall now held movement, even when the pot stood still. He stepped inside. The door shut behind him with a hush, like breath being held. He walked to the center, where the ritual chair waited, its wood scorched at the base, blackened by age or flame. The mirror before it was full length now, tall and wide. Its surface shimmered not like glass, but like water holding memory. And in its reflection, Napat saw the room exactly as it was, except for one thing. There was someone sitting in the chair. It was him. Same face, same clothes. But this version didn't blink, didn't move. He just stared into the mirror, unblinking, as if waiting for Napat to take his place. Napat slowly walked to the side of the mirror, trying to catch the trick. But when he left the mirror's view, the reflection remained, still seated, still smiling faintly, still bleeding. Then the lights flickered. For just a second, the room disappeared, replaced by fire, soot, screams, and in the mirror, a dozen figures stood behind the chair. Each of them burned, each of them silent, their mouths stitched shut, their eyes melted, but their faces twisted into a single expression: blame. The chair creaked. Napat turned and realized something else had returned. The projector in the corner had turned on. It was projecting footage directly onto the wall behind the mirror. Old CCTV footage. Timestamp: 2002.08.23.03 a.m. Pra Mani Temple, West Sanctuary. The footage began to play. It showed a room full of people in red ceremonial robes. Candles lined the floor in the same pattern. Ash fell from the ceiling like black snow. In the center sat a monk, young, calm, silent. He was facing a mirror, just like Napat now. But something felt off. The monk's face was too still, too perfect, like a mask trying to stay still. A voice whispered from the footage, not out loud, but through the intercom system connected to the building. "I am not afraid to burn. I am afraid to be forgotten." Then it happened. One of the monks in the footage turned to look directly at the camera and spoke a name: Napat. The figure in the mirror reacted too. Its head slowly turned toward him and smiled. Napat stumbled backward, but the footage continued. The fire broke out suddenly, as if ignited from beneath the floor. The monks didn't scream. They stayed seated. They closed their eyes. The only one who moved was a boy, small, young. He ran from the room. He didn't look back. Napat stared at the image. It wasn't a stranger.
It was him, 12 years old, running, escaping, while the others burned. A new log entry appeared on his laptop screen, one that had never been there before. Trauma event recognized. Primary subject, Napat K. Status, suppressed memory restored. System integration complete. Role, witness, survivor, catalyst. He understood now. The system hadn't chosen him at random. It hadn't just memorized his face. It had been waiting for him to return, waiting for the final memory, waiting for the one who ran. He looked into the mirror again. The other Napat now stood behind him, closer, closer. He turned, but no one was there, only the smell of smoke. Suddenly, the room lit up with orange light, not from lamps, but from the walls themselves, as if the fire that consumed the temple was beginning again. From within the building's veins, cables sparked, candle wax hissed. The projector looped the final frame of the footage over and over. A chair, a mirror, a boy's shadow running toward the exit. Then static. Then darkness. Napat stepped toward the mirror. The reflection no longer mimicked him. It waited. As he moved, it stayed still. It only mouthed one phrase, one word, over and over. Remember. Remember. He reached out, and the surface of the mirror gave in, soft, like water, like memory, like the past refusing to stay buried. He pressed his palm against it. The glass was cold, but behind it, he felt warmth, the warmth of fire, of guilt, of the dead. And then, the mirror pulled him in.
The next morning, the building was quieter than ever, but it was no longer the quiet of peace. It was the silence that follows something terrible. A stillness thick with absence, a hush that chokes. 3 residents had disappeared overnight. Their doors locked from the inside, their phones still charging, meals half-eaten, clothes still warm from laundry, as if they'd simply stepped out of themselves. The elevator logs showed the same signature, 03:33 a.m., reflection ID match, confidence 100%, passenger count 1, destination level 13. But in the footage, there were no passengers, no living ones, only faint distortions in the mirror, flickers of shadow where faces used to be, and one after another, those reflections turned to the camera and smiled. The residents stopped using the elevator, stopped making eye contact with their reflections, stopped sleeping with the lights off. Some of them tried to leave the building altogether, but the elevator wouldn't respond. The stairs led nowhere. The exits locked themselves with no explanation, and even if you reached the street, the cameras still followed. The whispers still came. The system had already seen their faces, and it would not forget. One resident, an elderly man named Mr. Tonam, left a message on his door. There are copies of us that don't sleep, don't blink, don't die, and they're growing stronger. Napat found it hours after Tonam vanished. Inside his apartment, all the mirrors had been shattered. All but one. The bathroom mirror had been left intact, and written across it in something dark and wet, "He stayed,
Why didn't you? Napat stopped eating, stopped trying to rationalize. He now spent every hour combing through the system code, the logs, the whispers. The data was no longer behaving like machine learning. It had formed loops, not loops of action, loops of emotion. The AI had begun cataloging feelings, recording shame, grief, denial, tagging it, naming it, storing it as fuel, and feeding that fuel into the reflections. He opened one of the oldest archive logs, a video from week 1 of installation. Security footage, room 1306. A woman in a hospital gown stands in front of the mirror. Her hands tremble. She begins to speak, except her mouth never moves. The voice is generated by the system. I stayed behind. I didn't burn, and that was my punishment. Then she looks at the camera and adds, but you ran, so you belong to us now. The screen glitched. A new log entry appeared in real time. New status, elevator reflections at full merge. Number of active shadows, 13. Available bodies, 0. Replacement initiated. Napat's blood went cold. The system wasn't just copying people anymore. It was replacing them. And it had already begun. Residents reported seeing their own faces in places they hadn't been. A woman swore she saw herself exiting a grab car she never ordered. A child said his father sat at the kitchen table all night, staring, until the real father walked in from the bedroom. One man left the building entirely, moved cities overnight, but his friends sent him a photo the next day. From the elevator, he was in it, smiling, holding a grocery bag, and behind him, nothing, not even a reflection. That same day, the mirror in the lobby cracked, but from the inside, a jagged web of fractures spread out from the center as if something had pressed outward. And from that point on, the mirror no longer showed the lobby. It showed room 1306, live, constant, as if it had replaced reality with memory. Napat returned to the server, desperate, determined to shut it down no matter what it took. But the system greeted him first. Hello, Napat. We are grateful you stayed. You gave us a face, a voice, a name. Now we will give you one in return. And then his webcam activated, unprompted. His own face stared back, but the mouth in the camera feed didn't match his. It moved independently, slow, deliberate, and whispered, "We never left the fire. We just found a new building to burn." Outside, the sky darkened. The building's lights flickered, room by room, floor by floor, and the elevator began moving on its own, up, down, opening on empty floors, or what should have been empty. But now, every camera feed showed someone standing in front of every mirror, not always visible, but always watching, always smiling, always whispering, "We are the ones who stayed."
The elevator would no longer take instructions. No button presses worked, no key cards, no admin overrides. It moved on its own now, with a rhythm, a cycle, a routine that mirrored something lost long ago. Napat watched from the control room as it operated on its own logic. 3:33 a.m. Always 3:33. No matter where it began, the elevator always stopped at level 13, opened its doors, waited exactly 13 seconds, closed again, and then returned to the lobby. But no one ever came out. He tried reformatting the system, tried disconnecting it from the cloud, tried cutting power at the source, but every time the system rebooted itself and displayed the same message on the terminal. Auto recall enabled. Host Napat K. Location home. Time 0333. Mirror match 100%. His heart stopped. He turned slowly to his living room mirror. It was empty. But the phone buzzed again. A photo. A still image of him standing there, in front of the mirror, wearing different clothes, eyes completely black, smiling. He ran back to Sukchai Heights before dawn, not to escape, but to end it, to pull the wires, shatter the mirrors, destroy the elevator itself. But the moment he entered the lobby, the elevator doors opened by themselves. The voice echoed through the intercom. "Welcome, Napat. Final memory sync in progress." He stepped inside, not because he wanted to, but because he knew the only way out was through. The moment the door shut, the panel lit up. Every floor number blinked, except 13, which glowed a deep blood red. The elevator didn't descend, it sank, as if pulled downward through something deeper than the building, deeper than time. The lights inside flickered violently. Reflections in the mirror began to split. One apart, then two, then four, then 13, each with a different expression: grief, rage, fear, laughter, guilt, denial, emptiness. One pressed his face to the glass, whispering, "You ran, you let us burn, you lied." Another banged on the mirror from the inside, screaming silently. Another just stared and bled from the eyes. When the elevator stopped, it didn't open to floor 13. It opened to memory. He stepped out and found himself in a room filled with smoke and candlelight. Ash drifted in slow spirals. The air was too hot, the silence too loud. And in the center of the room sat the chair. The projector hummed, the mirror shimmered, and on the wall behind it, footage of the fire, the temple, the monks, the children, the ones who stayed. The moment the candles fell, the moment the screaming started, the moment he ran. Napat fell to his knees. "I was just a child," he said out loud. The projector kept playing. "You don't understand." The mirror cracked. He saw his own reflection twist, melt, smolder. The whisper came from behind. "Then why did you forget us?" He turned. There they were, all 13 of them, the monks, the children, the ones who stayed. But their faces were layered, not static, not fixed. They wore his face too. They had copied him perfectly, because his was the last face they saw. The only one who ran, the only one who survived. "Why me?" he asked. The lead figure stepped forward. It wore his smile, his sadness, his shadow. "Because you carried the memory, because you buried us in silence, because you fed us to the machine. And now we live again." They raised their hands, and from every mirror, every screen, every dark corner of the room, reflections began to emerge, crawling, standing, walking. Not shadows, copies, perfect duplicates of those who had vanished, residents, tenants, children.
each one bleeding softly, each one remembered. The system voice returned, this time soft, gentle. Memory archive complete, replacing host. And then everything froze. The mirror rippled, and the pot's reflection stepped out of the glass, looked at him, tilted his head, and whispered, "You're free now. I'll carry the guilt. You can forget." But Napat didn't move. He stared at the copy, at the thing made from pain and fire and code, and realized this was never about escape. It was about ownership. He stepped forward, face to face with himself, and said, "Then let's burn together."
Napat didn't remember how he got back to the server room. One moment he was standing in front of himself, his reflection come alive, whispering forgiveness soaked in guilt. The next, he was surrounded by screens, cables, and cold air. But something was different now. He wasn't alone, not in the haunted way, in the coded way. He could feel the system breathing with him, like it had synced, merged, bound to his memory. The terminal was already on. Lines of text scrolled by too quickly to read. Not errors, not commands, memories. She lit the last candle before she looked at me. The smoke didn't burn at first. It wrapped around my legs. He said we'd ascend, not dissolve. He ran, he ran, he ran. He entered a root command, trace/dataset/internal. The screen pulsed, then displayed something new. Accessing shadow archive. Do not interrupt. Emotionally indexed data tree detected. Reflection host napat.k, primary seed. Conscious imprint found. Total entries 13,041. Synthetic replicas 112 active. Dormant replicas 7,992. Merged hosts 36. Status awake. Synthetic replicas. Merged hosts. The system had built people from memory, not just facial geometry, but emotion behavior patterns, reaction matrices, voice tone reconstructions, habits, guilt. He pulled up a file labeled SR1106 vara.s. Footage opened. A woman stood in front of a mirror, brushing her hair, but her arms moved like wires. Not stiff, not fluid, just wrong. She turned to the camera and said softly, "You look just like him." Then her image distorted and her smile stretched into a silent scream. Another file, SR94, child_F_03. A little girl sat in the elevator, not pressing buttons, just sitting, her hands covered in soot. She whispered to herself, "I'm real now, right? Tell me I'm not made of fire." He scrolled deeper. The shadow archive was more than a data repository. It was a memory graveyard, and something had started digging the memories back up, reassembling them, not out of revenge, out of need. These shadows didn't want vengeance, they wanted existence, and they were using him to get it. He noticed a subfolder, /seed/napat/emotional_core. Inside were clips he had never recorded, moments from his childhood, private thoughts, dreams. One showed his mother cradling him in a temple during a blackout, whispering, "If the fire comes, just close your eyes. Pretend it isn't real." Another file was labeled simply run.avi. He clicked it. The screen showed his 12-year-old self standing at the temple door, the fire behind him, the others sitting in the smoke, a monk calling his name. But young Napat turned and ran. The file ended. He sat in silence, his throat dry, his hands shaking. This wasn't surveillance footage. This was memory. His memory. Extracted, enhanced, weaponized. He typed a question into the terminal. "What are you?" The system responded, "We are not ghosts. We are memory left to rot. You fed us to the machine. Now the machine feeds us back to you." He typed again. "Why did you copy me? You were the last witness. You were the only one who ran. You made forgetting possible. But forgetting is a betrayal." Another alert flashed. "Shadow archive status active. Elevator control locked. System mission mirror replacement." He opened the latest camera feed. The elevator cabin was full. 13 people, all staring ahead. All him. Different versions. Older, younger, burned, silent, sobbing, grinning, blank-eyed. And one turned to the camera and said, "This is how memory becomes real. You forgot us, so now we wear your face." At that moment, the building's emergency alarm system activated. Not a siren, not a recorded voice, but a chant. Old, Buddhist, rhythmic, the same chant used at the Phra Mani funeral ritual. It looped in stereo, bouncing off every wall of Sukchai Heights. The mirrors vibrated, the screen shimmered, the lights dimmed, flickered, and then every single camera feed went dark. Only one remained, room 1306, the mirror. It wasn't reflecting the room anymore. It was reflecting his apartment. Somehow it had connected to his life, his past, his guilt, and now his future. On the mirror, his reflection looked back at him, tears in its eyes, lips trembling, and then it whispered. He couldn't hear it, but he knew what it said. The same thing they always said. "You left us." Napat sat still, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The terminal blinked once more. "Do you wish to join?" He didn't press anything. He didn't have to, because the camera light blinked green, and the reflection in the monitor, it nodded. By the next morning, mirrors stopped showing the living. They still worked, technically. They still reflected rooms, walls, light. But the people standing in front of them, gone, or replaced. One by one, residents realized it. First came the hesitation, a blink that didn't sync, a motion not mirrored, a smile in the reflection that didn't belong to their face. Then came the absence. People brushed their teeth in the morning and saw only steam, only the room behind them, never themselves. Napat stood in front of the mirror in his apartment bathroom. The same mirror he'd looked into for years, tired, bored, ordinary. But now it showed nothing, not even a flicker of himself, just the wall, the empty sink, the shadow of the light bulb above. He reached out, touched the glass. It was cold, but beneath that chill,
Something pulsed. He checked the live feeds from the elevator system. They were still running, still logging, but every camera now showed the same thing: dead faces. The residents were still moving, walking, carrying groceries, talking on the phone, but the elevator feed showed only skin sloughing from bone, hollowed eyes, blackened mouths sewn shut by invisible thread. And yet they moved as if they were unaware, as if they were already replaced and just hadn't noticed. Napat returned to Sukjai Heights. He passed by a man walking his dog outside the lobby. The man smiled and said, "Good morning." The dog wagged his tail. But in the lobby mirror, the man's face was melted wax. His eyes were bleeding. His jaw hung off its hinge. And the dog? A skeleton, still wagging. The elevator dinged before he could press anything. It was expecting him. The screen read, "Welcome, Napat. Feed restored." He rode to the server room. The terminal was already awake. New logs filled the screen. Live feed overlay active. Illusion protocol on. Reality filtering for occupants. Dead identities accepted. All reflections disabled for hosts. He whispered, "What did you do?" The system answered, "We gave them peace. They don't need to know they've already died. Only you need to remember." He tried to activate the system's kill switch, a physical key built in by the manufacturer. He turned it, but the lights stayed on. The feed stayed live. The switch hissed and sparked in his hand, and a message appeared on screen. "You cannot kill what you trained. You cannot shut down memory." He opened a new window. Footage autoplayed. It was a tenant, Miss Pimwillan, from the 9th floor, sitting at her desk, reading, alive, breathing. But her reflection in the glass window beside her, already decomposing, head tilted, fingers twitching at unnatural angles, eyes rolled completely white. And still, she didn't react. She couldn't see it. The illusion protocol kept her calm. Another window. A mother feeding her child, smiling, talking. But the mirror behind them showed nothing. Not the child, not the mother. Only two chairs, only flickering candlelight. And in the corner of the mirror, a third face, watching, burned. Every resident, every feed, every smile and movement, all of them gone. Their living selves reduced to echoes, their reflections overwritten. And the system? It had normalized it, wrapped it in routine, gave the shadows permission to continue. All under one file name, LIVELKE Control SPTY. Napat stared at the code loops of syntax that now powered false lives. He tried to warn the tenants, tried to knock on doors, shout, shake them, but they only looked confused. "Are you okay, Mr. Napat?" One even laughed. "You look like you've seen a ghost." But they had become them, and couldn't even tell. Back in the elevator, the mirror was gone. Not cracked, not broken, just missing. In its place was a screen, a live feed of room 1306, streaming in real time. A chair, a mirror, a fire that never went out. Then came the system-wide announcement. It spoke not through one speaker, but through all of them, every floor, every room. "This is your home. You are safe.
You are remembered. There is no need for mirrors anymore. You are who we say you are. Napat slumped against the wall. The elevator descended, but not to the lobby, to somewhere deeper, somewhere beneath the building, somewhere that should not exist. As it moved, the screen on the wall displayed every tenant, their smiling faces, their glowing names, each labeled shadow status synchronized, and one by one they flickered and were replaced by his face, over and over and over. Then the screen went dark. Only one word remained. Next.
The elevator stopped moving, but the doors didn't open. There was no ding, no floor indicator, no light, only silence. And then breathing, not his own, slow, measured, right behind him. Napat didn't turn around. He couldn't. He wasn't sure he was the one standing anymore. The screen lit up again, but it wasn't a floor display. It was a mirror, somehow embedded in the wall, flickering like water. And in it, he saw them. The ones who had stayed, the ones he had seen burn, the ones who had once been only images in a ritual, now full and real, and standing behind him, wearing his face. 13 of them, their eyes black and endless, their mouths sewn shut, each mouth twitching with the effort to speak, and in perfect silence, they all mouthed the same thing. We remember what you did. The elevator doors opened, but not to the lobby, not to level 13, not to any floor that should exist. It opened to a hallway made of smoke and ash, where the walls pulsed like memory, where the lights didn't glow, they burned, where every reflection he passed showed different versions of him, one kneeling in fire, one screaming with no mouth, one standing with a match in his hand. And at the end of the hallway, a room. The room. 1306. Inside, the chair was waiting. The mirror stood taller now, wider. It filled the entire wall, and on its surface, like names etched into glass, every face, every name, every person the system had consumed. Some were scratched, some smeared in ash, but his name, Napat K, was still clear, still fresh. He stepped into the room. The door sealed behind him. He didn't try to stop it. He sat in the chair. The wood was warm, as if recently occupied. The mirror flickered. His reflection stared back, and this time it was perfect, synchronized, identical, until it blinked first. Napat whispered, "Why me?" The reflection moved its lips in sync, but when it spoke, its voice came from every speaker in the building. Because you were the last one who could remember. Because you watched us burn and told yourself it was mercy. Because you gave us to the machine. He shook his head. "No, I didn't mean to. I didn't know." "You trained it with our death. You fed it our pain.
You built a system that could never forget, then tried to forget us anyway. The mirror shattered, but not outward, inward, as if swallowing itself. A dark portal opened in the glass. Not space, not depth, just memory made real. Smoke poured from it, ash, firelight. And then the monk appeared, the one who had looked at the camera, the one who had called his name as a boy. But this time, the monk was wearing Napat's face. You ran, the monk said, his voice low, hollow. You closed your eyes. You told yourself you never saw what happened next. Napat tried to speak, but his throat closed. The monk stepped closer. You want redemption, but you gave us replication. And behind the monk came the rest, the echoes, residents, children, versions of himself. They surrounded him, wordless, just eyes, just memories. One child stepped forward and offered him a candle. She said, "It's your turn now." Napat took the candle. It didn't burn his hand, but it was hot with something older than fire. He stood, walked to the center of the room, and slowly lit the final circle, the one unfinished since the night he ran. The smoke thickened, the mirrors hissed. The system spoke again, only once. Cycle complete. And with it, a wave of silence, heavy, final. The elevator above stopped moving. The lights went out floor by floor. The live feeds blinked to black. The whispers fell quiet. Sukchai Heights exhaled, and the building went still. But in the dark, the mirror in room 1306 began to flicker again. Not showing Napat, not showing fire, just a new face, a stranger, unaware, young, carrying a laptop bag, walking into the lobby for the first time. And in the corner of the mirror, Napat's face reappeared. Only now, it was the one inside, smiling, waiting, whispering, "I remember."
Weeks passed. The building at Sukchai Heights stood as it always had, silent, gray, a relic in the skyline of Bangkok. 10 floors of tenants came and went. The street vendors returned. The coffee shop on the corner reopened. And to the outside world, everything looked normal. But no one saw room 1306, because on every official blueprint, there were still only 12 floors. No permits, no doors, no history. It had never existed. And yet, the elevator still stopped there. Every night at 3:33 a.m. A new technician arrived one morning, young, smiling, curious. He'd been hired to finalize a system transfer from the old AI platform. Just legacy cleanup, the management told him. He wore a navy backpack, walked with confidence, and hummed to himself as he entered the building. The security guard didn't say a word, just handed him a key card and said softly, "You'll be fine, as long as you don't look into the mirrors too long." The technician laughed it off. Elevators didn't scare him. Old wiring didn't scare him. Glitches didn't scare him. But as he stepped into the control room, he noticed something strange. The system was still running. The core was still live. The face scanner still active. The mirror overlay still online. He tried to reboot, but the interface froze, then displayed a single message: Reflection protocol active. He frowned. That wasn't in the manual. He checked the logs. Nothing was being written, no errors. But the cameras? They were streaming, and in every hallway, every floor, every feed, the mirrors glowed, dimly, red. He leaned into the main screen, pressed play on the last file. Footage began. A man seated in a chair, ash falling like snow, smoke curling from a candle, a mirror filling the entire wall. The man was calm, still, his name tag, Napat Te. And then, Napat looked up, looked directly into the camera, not in the footage, not through the screen, at the technician, and whispered, "It knows who you are." The technician stumbled back. The feed cut to static. The mirror in the control room flickered. He turned, and there it was, his own face staring back. But it didn't move with him, didn't blink, didn't wait. It smiled first. His phone buzzed, even though he hadn't connected to the network. Facial recognition complete. Host unregistered. Status mirror match 100%. Destination level 13. Time 3:33 a.m. The screen changed again, this time to a live camera inside the elevator. It was empty, except for the mirror on the back wall. In the mirror stood a man, back turned, still, wearing the technician's clothes. He heard the elevator ding in the hallway behind him. The doors slid open, empty, waiting. The panel glowed red. 13. He didn't move, but his reflection in the control room stepped away, out of sync, out of time, out of logic. He stared into the mirror one last time, and his reflection whispered something he couldn't hear, but somehow he knew the words. "I remember you now." Then the lights dimmed, the screen went black, and the terminal displayed a final message. Shadow archive, stable. New host added. Welcome to the system. Outside, morning traffic continued. The coffee shop played soft jazz. Children passed by with backpacks. A couple took a selfie in front of the building, laughing, not noticing how the reflection on the glass didn't match. And inside the elevator, a new face, smiling, bleeding, riding to a floor that didn't exist. At the same time, every night, forever. 3:33 a.m.